Remember, just doing a media interview doesn't mean you're answering tough questions.
Thank you so much for joining us. What's your reaction to what you heard from your counterpart and from the Democrats this evening in Chicago?
Well, I think it's an interesting contrast, Jake, between what President Trump and I are offering, which is very simple. We are advancing policies that are going to lower the cost of housing, lower the cost of food, secure the southern border, and raise wages for the middle class. And Kamala Harris really can't run on accomplishing that because her policies have, in fact, caused a lot of the problems and a lot of the suffering that we see in our country. So what you see from the Democrats is instead this argument that if you want to vote for Donald Trump because you want to change the direction of this country, you're somehow a bad person. And I really think that that dark message really doesn't gel at all with the idea that somehow the Democrats are the joyful party. There's a lot of attacks on Donald Trump, a lot of criticisms of what he's done and what he...
Okay, right there. Jake Tapper right now is going to ask about the tariffs Trump wants to do that every economist agrees are terrible and would increase costs for Americans. Every other cost increase that Trump is going to pass through sales tax and everything else. Also, how is the Democratic Convention dark when Donald Trump starts every speech with, "We're literally in World War III, 1929 depression, the world is going to crash, stock market crash, you'll get raped if you walk outside." Donald Trump literally starts every speech with that. So JD Vance, why are you saying that Democrats are having a dark convention when Donald Trump starts everything off with that? And also, why are you talking about Democrats criticizing Trump as something dark? Because they're criticizing Trump for inciting an insurrection and trying to do a coup against the U.S. government. And also, you know, Donald Trump started a riot at our nation's capital to delay the certification of a Democratic election. So Jake Tapper's he's going to definitely answer those questions,
He
right?
said
100%.
Not a whole lot of positive vision for how Kamala Harris is going to fix the problems that plague the country.
There's also been some criticisms of you. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg this evening spoke tonight. He took aim at one of your past comments from 2021, that Americans that don't have children have, quote, no physical commitment to the future of this country, unquote. I want you to take a listen and get your reaction.
You know, Senator, when I deployed to Afghanistan, I didn't have kids then. Many of the men and women who went outside the wire with me didn't have kids either. But let me tell you, our commitment to the future of this country was pretty damn physical.
Why would Kamala Harris give tons of media interviews if they are going to grill her on policy? Absolutely grill Kamala on policy. Donald Trump said about inflation, "I'm going to hire the best people and use everything in my power to reduce inflation." That was Trump's policy. And also, drill, baby, drill. That's all Trump said. Meanwhile, Kamala needs to provide a 1 million-page document for her policies. Trump still does not have a healthcare policy at all. It's been 8 years. It's been over 8 years. Trump does not have a healthcare policy. If they are not going to talk about actual policies with Republicans, why would Democrats go to these media networks and be grilled about these things? Why would they not just talk to voters? And meanwhile, when they do have like JD Vance on CNN or whatever, they're asking politics questions. They're not answering or following up on policy. They're bringing up the Buttigieg thing because that's going to get views.
What's your response?
Well, my response, Jake, is that Pete Buttigieg has taken a sarcastic remark that I made 3 years ago and turned it into something to distract from the fact that his leadership has seen higher transportation costs, higher fuel costs, and higher food prices for American citizens all over our country. These guys act so focused on a sarcastic quip that I made that they ignore the fact that
Oh, now it's sarcastic. Okay.
has seen higher transportation costs, higher fuel costs, and higher food prices for American citizens all over our country. These guys act so focused on a sarcastic quip that I made that they ignore the fact that under Kamala Harris's leadership, Americans can't afford the basic necessities of a good life in this country. And so I appreciate that Pete Buttigieg pretends to be offended by what I said. I think Pete should be offended by the fact that under his leadership as Secretary of Transportation, the government took in $8 billion to build 7 electric vehicle charging facilities at a time when Americans are paying.
Okay, now Jake's going to say how that's not true, and Jake's also going to ask more about what JD Vance is going to do with the policies he's recommending that are also reinforced by the comments he made. So the comments that are sarcasm now, that JD Vance said multiple times, are also in line with the policies that JD Vance wants when it comes to banning women's health care. So Jake Tapper's going to definitely ask about that.
45% more
100%.
for the gas that transports them to work. That's what we should be focused on, and that's what we should be talking about. And it illustrates.
Perfect. We're talking about gas prices. All right, JD Vance. We are producing the most gas we have ever did. We're drilling the most gas we've ever drilled in American history. All right. We have an X number of crude oil refineries. This is what takes crude oil from the ground and makes it usable for cars and other, engines or whatever. JD Vance, what are you going to do? Although we're already producing the #1 oil in the world, we're drilling the most oil. How are you going to increase the number of oil refineries? Or how are you going to really reduce energy costs? Jake Tapper, you are a famous
Jake, my entire criticism of the Democratic approach here is they're focused on fake issues instead of the real record. And the real record is that Kamala Harris has made this country poorer. Donald Trump made the middle class richer, and he caused a lot.
She did bad things, I did good things. That's what he just said.
A lot of peace and prosperity to break out in this country and all over the world. It's a very simple contrast, and I wish the Democrats would focus on the issues.
There was another comment about you I wanted to get a reaction to. This evening we heard a bit about January 6, 2021. We saw a video of police officers getting assaulted. Take a listen to what Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin said the other night about you.
And by the way, JD Vance, do you understand why there was a sudden job opening for running mate on the GOP ticket? They tried to kill your predecessor.
Okay, this is a good one. I like this clip. All right, this is fine because this connects back to the insurrection and coup.
Do you have any reservations at all taking the ticket, taking the opportunity?
Oh, what a bad way to ask the question.
To serve as a vice presidential nominee, given what happened to Vice President Pence on January 6th?
Focus on why JD Vance said that he would actually go through with the coup. JD Vance literally said if he was in Vice President Mike Pence's position, then he would have certified the fake electors. Ask him that question.
No, not at all, Jake. And look, I can't help but laugh at what Jamie Raskin said. These are people who somehow always make themselves the victims. Jamie Raskin should be much more worried about the fact that there are a lot of Americans that can't afford to buy groceries, that can't afford to put their children in a nice home because of the policies that he has implemented and he has voted for. I just don't understand a person in American politics in 2024 who's whining about what happened to them instead of using their leadership and using their influence to make the lives of American citizens better. I have no reservations about taking this job because I know that if we make Donald J. Trump president of the United States, he's going to deliver rising wages, lower prices, and a secure border. That is all worth it for me, whatever the media or Jamie Raskin says about me.
I want to play some of what Governor Walz said during his speech, his acceptance speech earlier tonight, and get your reaction.
This is literally like CNN doing a free press conference for JD Vance. Like softball questions, no rebuttals, like no follow-ups, nothing at all. Like this is literally just a free press conference.
It's an agenda that serves nobody except the richest and the most extreme amongst us.
Or not even a press conference. It's more just like a stump speech or whatever.
And it's an agenda that does nothing for our neighbors in need. Is it weird? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's also wrong.
Now the Democrats are going to focus on calling us weird instead of what's going to get grocery prices lower.
Your reaction to that?
Well, when Donald Trump was president, Jake, you had people buying homes at record rates. You had young Americans who were able to afford to raise a family. You had people who could afford the basic trappings of middle-class life in this country. And so when Tim Walz says that Donald Trump's agenda doesn't work for middle-class Americans, He already was president for 4 years, and his agenda worked very well for middle-class Americans. Again, I just wish, I would love for Tim Walz or Kamala Harris or anybody else to say that during the 3.5 years that Kamala Harris was vice president, here is the thing that she did to make groceries more affordable. Here is the thing that she did to make it possible to raise a family in this country. Or here's the thing that she did to secure rather than open up the border. Because they can't talk about...
They did policies for all of those things, and they couldn't pass them because Republicans blocked them, including the border bill written by the most conservative Republican, which did not pass because Donald Trump told them to not pass it. He tried doing all of that, and I see all these comments from centrists and right-wingers. Why didn't she do all this stuff when she was in office? There's a vote you can go back to for literally every issue where Republicans are the ones voting no. Democrats are trying to vote yes. She wants to be the tie-breaking vote. All Republicans are voting no and denying it. She can't just like literally be a dictator like Trump wants to be.
Kamala Harris's record, they're creating a phantom of Donald Trump's leadership. The Donald Trump that I know and that the American people know, I think, produced really good results for the American people. It's a record to be proud of, and a record I'd like to get back to, frankly, because it was good for the American people.
Both you and President Trump have suggested that there's something wrong or illegitimate about the way that Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden on the Democratic ticket. Now that the Democratic convention is here, do you accept Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, as the legal and legitimate presidential nominee of the Democratic Party?
I'd rather you ask a question about the 2020 election, to be honest. Do you say that the election was stolen or not?
Well, first of all, Jake, she's certainly the legitimate nominee of the Democratic Party. We're going to debate her, and we're going to try to beat her in November. But I do think it's a little bizarre how the Democrats went about this. We have to remember that for 3.5 years, Kamala Harris and a lot of Democrats said that Joe Biden was totally fit for the job. That was revealed to be a lie. And then when it became obvious that Joe Biden was political dead weight, they replaced him without casting a single Democrat primary vote. That doesn't make it illegal, but it certainly makes it a little bizarre. And if
I think Democrats should say Republic primary vote because they say Democrat instead of Democratic. Instead of Republican, just Republic. Or just like, I don't know. It's wild. It's wild.
As a Joe Biden voter, I'd be pretty frustrated at the way that this unfolded.
No one's frustrated, and she was a VP, so she was on the ticket that they voted for anyway. No one cares. If you want to break up the two-party system and, you know, get rid of the Electoral College and all that fun stuff, then we can. But you know they would say no to that. You know JD Vance would say no to that. So I don't know what he's saying right there.
Before you go, quickly, if you could, CNN's reporting that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is expected to suspend his presidential campaign on Friday. It's been...
Oh, no. The RFK media cycle is going to be the death of me.
Reported that he's considering endorsing Donald Trump, especially if he gets made Secretary of Health and Human Services or such. Have the two men been talking? Do you expect an endorsement? How much might it help?
You know, so I don't talk to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Jake. I certainly listen to what he says, and I do think that he is a guy who recognizes that the Kennedy Democrats of old have been replaced by the Kamala Harris Democrats who support high inflation and open borders. So I'm not surprised that he feels left behind by the Democratic Party. I think a lot of Democrats, a lot of people like my grandparents feel left behind by the Democratic Party. I would certainly welcome his endorsement of Donald Trump. I've seen the same reports you mentioned. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but I certainly hope it does, because I do think it would be helpful, because it drives home this idea that the Democratic Party of John F. Kennedy, it's just not the Democratic Party of 2024. Let's get back to common sense. And
yeah, RFK, anti-vaxxer, brainworms guy, the dead bear in Central Park. That's going to really help. I think RFK is going to have a zero effect on the campaigns. He might actually hurt Trump. I don't think RFK's voters are just going to go line up for Trump. I don't know if it matters in certain states. But yeah, these are a nice, compilation of clips to understand why the Harris campaign is staying away from the media in certain areas, and I think it makes sense. The way the media is covering everything is ridiculous. The fact-checking they're doing, the way they're doing the fact-checking is so dumb. You'll see a claim that, Biden makes that Trump wants to cut Medicare and Trump wants to cut Social Security. And the claim will say this is false. Biden's claim about Trump is false because although Trump proposed the budgets every single year as president trying to cut these things, Trump said in a recent interview that he doesn't want to cut them. He does not want to cut them in an interview. And we're going to go off of what Trump like said versus off what Trump actually did. So even the fact checking in the media is wild right now. Everything Trump does is graded on a curve. You know, if he says one full sentence, everyone thinks it's amazing. It's like Drake coming out with an actual good rap verse every once in a while. Like Kendrick needs to rap good in order for people to think it's good. J. Cole needs to rap good for people to think it's good. But if Drake actually comes out rapping, then you're like, oh, wow, this is a good job, Drake. You actually were rapping on an actual hip-hop beat. Good job. It's kind of like that a little bit. Okay.